Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today we are going to talk about Jupiter turning retrograde in the sign of Cancer. This is maybe one of the most important turning points of the year for the planet Jupiter. I don't think a lot of people are talking about, and that is specifically because as Jupiter is turning retrograde, it is also ruling the Mercury retrograde, which is conjoining Mars. That was happening yesterday into today, which we covered on we did some live horoscopes on, and we've been talking about to start this week. Now we're going to turn our attention to Jupiter's retrograde and what that might mean as a major turning point within the year, as well as connected to this Mercury retrograde cycle. I'm going to give you a list of things to watch for. And then tomorrow, I'm going to be doing some Jupiter retrograde horoscopes to sort of fill out the story. But today, let's explore this on an archetypal level. I've also got a reading from the I Ching that I did on this Jupiter retrograde and its connection to the Mercury-Mars dynamic that I think you'll find really interesting, that will complement our list of things to watch for. And if you've never used the I Ching before, this will be my way of sort of gently encouraging you to check it out. I've got a great new translation. It's not, I don't get any, I'm not promoting this for any reason other than I love the book, but I'm going to tell you about a book that I've been looking at recently for the I Ching as well. It's easily my favorite new book I've ever read on the I Ching. More on that later. Anyway, before we get into it today, remember to like and subscribe. Clicking the subscribe button helps us grow immensely. We're trying to get to 100,000 subscribers on this channel by next summer. In order to do that, we need every person who comes across this and thinks it's solid content that they will give us a little subscribe. That helps us. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on the website, of course, which is nightlightastrology.com. The big news is that this is our final week for enrollment in the Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic course. Before it starts. I mean, you can always join us late, but we do start this weekend. So click on the first year course, go down to learn everything you need to know about the program. There's also an informational video tagged on to the end of today's content. We meet over the course of a year. We get into the roots of ancient Hellenistic astrology. We're really spending a lot of time understanding the philosophical, metaphysical roots of the practice, all of the earliest techniques that were used to understand karma, fate, destiny, and the birth chart. Everything in our programs also comes with a very modern archetypal sensibility. So I've been deeply influenced by archetypal psychology and astrology. That's always a part of everything we do at Nightlight. But this course in ancient astrology will also give you a really strong base in like the karmic analytics of traditional astrology, which can really help you grow as an astrologer, whether it's something you do for yourself or you practice professionally. At the bottom of the page, you'll find the enrollment options. What I want to encourage you to do is check out the need-based tuition option. If you missed the early bird sale, for example, and now it looks like you can't afford the course, we don't want people to be priced out of studying with us. So we have that flexible option that allows you to pick within a sliding scale. Please take advantage of that if for whatever reason you're needing a little bit of help to make the program happen. So glad to have that available for people for going on 16 years now. I've been saying each day why I think the program is worth it. For those of you who want to practice professionally, going through our programs and taking our certification tests at the end qualifies you to be a part of our lineage. Basically, when we certify people, because there's no major certifying organization in astrology, there are just various organizations that schools can choose to align themselves with or not, because it's not like certifications aren't like regulated in that sense. What we want people to do when they come through our programs, if they desire to practice professionally, is study with us, take the exams that we provide at the end of each year, and then consider yourself a part of a lineage. You've been certified within our unique lineage of astrology. And if that's something that you're looking for, to feel like you have a community and a lineage of support behind you as a practicing astrologer, then come study with us. That's what we're here for. All right. Well, on that note, let's turn our attention to the real-time clock and let's take a look at I'm going to go backward just a touch. And here we are today. Jupiter has just turned retrograde. So let's take a look at this. You can see here yesterday, Jupiter stationing in the sign of Cancer. We were doing live horoscopes yesterday. If you missed those, you can go back onto the live tab and check out the live stream I did doing Mercury-Mars retrograde horoscopes. There's a big conjunction between Mercury and Mars that we started off this week exploring. Then we did some horoscopes yesterday in the live stream, a good Q&A session. And what I want to explore now is the fact that, and I mentioned this Monday, but these two planets in the sign and bound of Jupiter, while Jupiter is in its exaltation and bound, but turning retrograde. You see that little S above Jupiter that indicates Jupiter's stationing. And then today, Jupiter is now retrograde. What does it mean that Jupiter is retrograde alone and on its own? As well as what does it mean that Jupiter is retrograde while hosting this very powerful Mercury-Mars dynamic in the sign of Sagittarius? That's what I want to look at today. I'm going to give you a list of 5 things to watch for alongside of this list of 5 things to watch for was influenced by my morning meditation with the I Ching, which I often do and sometimes over the years have included for you guys. And I thought, you know what? Feels like a good time to include a little bit of the I Ching today. So I'll do that. I'll explain the reading, explain how it goes into the list of 5 things to watch for. But first, let's talk about Jupiter turning retrograde on its own. These are tips or like general statements we could make about Jupiter turning retrograde anytime that it does so that you can work with going forward. Anytime a planet as slow moving as Jupiter, sometimes Mars a little bit faster, but Jupiter, Saturn for sure within the traditional 7 planets, when they reach points of retrogradation, it is always happening just as the sun comes into about a trine, whole sign and degree based trine with Jupiter or Saturn. As soon as that happens within the synodic cycle of the sun with Jupiter or the sun with Saturn, the planets are ready to change directions and go into their next phase of development within their synodic cycle. The synodic cycle with the sun is important because ancient astrology is an astrological system that's orientation comes from the sun. What is the zodiac? The zodiac is the great circle of the sun, the annual path of the sun or the solar year. It's then broken into 12 ideal mathematical divisions that are based on the 12 lunar cycles per year. And that ideal number of 12 is something I've talked about recently in a number of videos on my YouTube channel, talking about has the zodiac changed or is there a 13th sign and so forth. Anyway, the point being that the synodic cycles with planets like Jupiter and the sun are very important because the synodic cycle has to do with taking an archetype that it's sort of like if you can imagine that the sun is like the mind of God or the oneness of the universe. A planet like Jupiter or Saturn, when they come into a conjunction with the sun, receives something like a download. And I'm just using, metaphors here. They receive instructions. Let's call them instructions. And the instructions are evolutionary instructions that they will carry forward in their archetype, in their archetypal nature. And then that has a way of playing out across the entirety of the synodic cycle in all of the phasal dynamics that unfold from the start of the conjunction forward. So when we reach the trine and the planet changes directions, that becomes a really significant moment. Now, in that turning retrograde, the moment is you could say, because there's a waxing trine and there's a waning trine, and then there's 2 different retrogrades that there's a turning retrograde and then a turning direct that happen at those trines is what I'm trying to say. But at the time when the planet turns retrograde, it's as though after an initial period of carrying forward the archetypal intentions that the sun gave it, the instructions that the sun gave it, it's time to pause and reflect and revise and rework and integrate all words that work really nicely for the retrograde period. And that process begins at the time that the planet turns retrograde. So the beginning of a process of reworking an original set of instructions that were given is the basic meaning that we have in the sky right now. And let's just take a look at this cyclically. This is something we'll do tomorrow as well when we do horoscopes, but just take a look at this. I'm going to remove everything from the chart except for the sun and Jupiter. And what we're going to do is just look at their synodic cycle. So you can see right now, as Jupiter is turning retrograde, that the 2 planets are almost perfectly trine to one another. Now, let's go backward in time, and we're going to go back to their conjunction. Their conjunction occurred it's so crazy. The conjunction occurs almost precisely as the sun and Jupiter are conjunct in the sign of Cancer. right as Jupiter entered Cancer is what I meant to say. So as soon as Jupiter entered Cancer in June, the two planets conjoined and we had a new cycle. Now, tomorrow, we're going to take this into the whole sign horoscopes, and that's really going to help you refine your understanding of the upcoming retrograde period, because you can look at the topics of that whole sign house of Cancer and think what's been happening since June. You could start that homework right now if you want to. But here is the conjunction. This conjunction basically impregnates Jupiter with a set of archetypal evolutionary instructions that, unique to your birth chart and your horoscope, you can actually track the development of, which is pretty cool. It's like a karmic thread that's being developed. Now, as that thread develops, we're going to take this forward now. We go through the square, right? We had that square here about the middle of October. And now we're getting into the trine. And as the trine occurs, the change of direction occurs. So now what's going to happen is everything that Jupiter in Cancer has been teaching us, or working us through since June, is going to go through a period of reflection, revision, and integration. That process will unfold for quite some time, and it will reach a very important inflection point, a place of culmination and harvesting and completion about early January, when the sun opposes Jupiter. That's sort of like the full moon of the cycle. So then the retrogradation will change directions again here in the beginning of March, when the sun trines Jupiter again. And now that forward movement will happen. And basically what we get all the way up until the next conjunction of the two planets is the final stages of Jupiter's lessons for us. Jupiter's evolutionary work and karmic thread will pull all the way through until the next conjunction. And if we take that forward, that brings the next conjunction, what do you know, into early Leo. So we're going to see that the same exact thing happens when Jupiter enters Leo next summer. By late July, we have the start of a new synodic cycle in the sign of Leo, and the next whole sign house of your birth chart will become the place in which Jupiter's work is unfolding in your life. So it always follows a pattern like that. And if you study the patterns, you can learn a lot. And these moments, these retrogradation moments, and especially the stationing, when the planet stations to turn retrograde, that becomes a really important moment where you can feel the plot line turning, or you can feel a forward movement reflecting back inward, or even just almost like level 2. You're like, okay, that was like level 100, in college. I was like a freshman class. Now we're going into sophomore and junior classes, right? That the work deepens. And the reason that this is probably a turning point that nobody saw coming is because of how closely related this Jupiter retrogradation period is to it rules. Jupiter turning retrograde right now rules the Mercury-Mars conjunction, with Mercury turning retrograde in Sagittarius. That makes this a turning point that's going to take that work of Jupiter in Cancer 2-3 layers or levels deeper in a way that's a lot more shocking and sudden and surprising and fast and dramatic than you would expect from a Jupiter retrograde. That's because Mercury-Mars turning conjoining turning retrograde is a very dynamic spark plug like moment that this Jupiter retrograde is hosting. So again, tomorrow we're going to do horoscopes, but what I want to give you today is now a list of 5 things to watch for, with our starting point being that Jupiter retrogrades are always significant. The work is going deeper. It's time to revise, reflect, integrate, take that work of Jupiter in Cancer to a much deeper space in our psyches. But now we're doing so alongside of this very dynamic sudden shift or change from Mercury and Mars and Mercury's retrograde. So we're going to start with this. I did an I Ching reading, and what I do when I cast the I Ching, if you've never used it before, it's like the oldest of the Chinese classics. It's effectively like reading the I Ching is effectively like a form of bibliomancy, because this is like an ancient philosophical text that as time goes on starts being used in an oracular divinatory manner, which is really cool. Anyway, the book that I'm drawing from, by the way, that I've been raving about is Benabel Wen's The I Ching, the Oracle. someone recommended to me a while ago, and I finally got on Audible, and then I got the paper version because I loved listening to it so much on Audible. Anyway, it's a fantastic read, and she explores some of the matriarchal and shamanic roots of casting the I Ching, which I really appreciated, especially the shamanic origins of the I Ching that she explores in this book, which were just mind-blowing. As someone who's been working with the I Ching in my life, getting closer to 20 years now, as a more personal oracle, it's not, you've seen me included in my channel over the years, but it's something that's really been more for me than anything else. Anyway, great text. The reading that I did, the way that I started off is I just asked the I Ching, Jupiter's turning retrograde in Cancer and is ruling this Mercury-Mars dynamic. What might that mean on an archetypal level that I could share with everyone in the audience that would be meaningful and relevant? Please, illuminate. And then I went through the process of casting the I Ching. And often what happens is you get one hexagram back, and the hexagram has a series of teachings associated with it, and a number of lines associated with it become the focus of the reading, and then a second hexagram. So in my 5 things to watch for, I have followed the I Ching in the list today, based off from this reading. So I hope that makes sense. Let's get into it. So the first thing to watch for is the idea that you're waiting for rain, but there is no rain coming. The clouds are slowly accumulating. Small accumulation is one of the names of this hexagram, or cultivate gently, or gentle restraint, all of which point to small things gradually accumulating and becoming bigger things. And so there's a variety of ways you can read this hexagram relative to the Jupiter retrograde, its rulership over Mars Mercury right now. Let's get into it. I'm going to read you the text. Hexagram 9, the oracle, success in minor undertakings, ominous to endeavor in major undertakings. Passivity has taming power. A storm is brewing, and it is uncertain whether the clouds bring a rain that will nourish the fields or a rain that floods the rivers. It is a period to wait and see. Secrets, confusion, clouded judgment. The only way through is to be a subtle and unseen influence. Change conditions gently. The subtext reads, winds impel the heavens above, livestock in the sack, small gains, auspicious to proceed. The sage cultivates refinement, dense clouds with no rain. I set upon the western threshold, passing beyond the horizon. That which has been raised now yields returns. A wind from above yields creativity below. You gaze at the sky and see stillness. Know that passivity has taming power. The sky is in movement. There is wind spreading out the seeds. Wind is the least visible of all phenomenon, and yet that wind spreads the seeds far and wide, yielding productivity. For now, small gains to be had as the winds continue to nurture and refine. Power is accumulated by gently withholding its expression. Success in minor goals. You are a shepherd keeping your sheep calm with the calmness of your mind. Let the flock find their own shrubs and grass. The shepherd's only role is to see that they are safe. And yet here is the greater wisdom of cultivating gently. Do not delight in small advantages, or that is all you will ever achieve. The greatest gains are the result of benevolence and a mission to serve a greater good. The sage will always strive to achieve the impossible task of improving the world. I love this. Is one of my favorite the I Ching is one of my favorite texts of all time, but this hexagram is so beautiful and has come up for me in some moments in my life that I can only describe as anxiety-ridden and frustrated and impatient. It's as though when I really need something or I really want something, and it's not the smallest thing in the world that I need or want or I'm asking for, but I'm sort of anticipating it. I need something to work out. And it's not a small thing. It's like there's some weight or there's some real consequence if it doesn't work out. Like I need to get this job, or I need for this project to work out, or something like that. And there's something at stake. It's not just like a minor thing. It's a big thing. This hexagram will often come up when it says, look, the big thing will come eventually, but you have to have a bigger vision You have to care for small things with consistent effort, keep the bigger vision, wait patiently, don't get too aggressive, and know that this like gentle, like your ability to tame the bigness of the moment and the big feelings and desires and impatience and frustration, that nothing's coming immediately or nothing's coming right as you want it to, that the taming of those restless spirits will lead to success in time. The reason that I think this is so appropriate for a moment like this is here we have a Mercury retrograde in Jupiter's sign. Jupiter is exalted in its own bound in a very fertile sign, where it has the power to grant a lot of, let's call it fertile, creative abundance. But right now that might be held back a little bit. It might be that you have to wait for a period of time. And I don't think it's going to be too long. For example, if you find like right now you feel like you're frustrated waiting for something, or you're frustrated feeling like there's an accumulation happening, it's almost like, again, like psychically you can see the clouds gathering and you're waiting for this release of tension, but it's not releasing yet. That this is an omen, this Jupiter retrograde alongside of the Mercury-Mars retrograde, that it's coming, but it's very important right now. You're maybe even being tested a little bit to be patient and gentle and gently restrain the desires and the frustration. And then what happens? We're on the precipice, as this trine happens between the Sun and Jupiter, of another grand water trine. And that grand water trine is going to come through right at the time of a new moon in Scorpio opposite Uranus, when Mercury's cazimi at the heart of the Sun, starting to reset its synodic cycle. So it's almost like this hexagram is coming up to tell us right now, it could feel like you're being stalled out or delayed or blocked, or something that you're waiting to see released, or something you're waiting to see express. You're feeling frustrated by it, but be so gentle, be so patient, because it's going to release shortly and soon, but you're being tested. And I found with this hexagram in particular, that's almost exactly what it feels like. It ends up feeling like it's going to be okay. Those clouds will gather and eventually burst. And then that fertile power, that abundance, that feeling of flow will return, but it's not going to happen right now. That's very common when a planet like Jupiter, exalted in Cancer, is going to stop moving for a little bit, and it's ruling a Mercury retrograde that's barely moving in a conjunction with Mars. It could feel very frustrating. Can you feel that, right? Talking about energies lately, can you feel that energy? So the advice, here it is again. Success in minor goals. Cultivate gently. Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't mean be content with smallness. Be content with like, this is a hexagram that says, no, you can have a big vision, but if you're going to have a big vision, you have to have big patience. You have to be content in gently developing small things over a long period of time and trusting that the rain will come when it comes. Isn't that interesting advice for this, as it's coming just prior to another grand water trine? All right. Well, number 2, gentle restraint, small accumulation. The other thing that I have noticed is that when you're trying to grow or cultivate something, there are good signs that come that you can mistake for bad signs. So this hexagram to me is one that has come up many times when I've been at stages in my career where I'm trying to grow something, and it feels like the concept, the idea, the offering, whatever it is seeing like a little bit of success, but I thought it would see more. I thought it would do better than it's doing. This hexagram, again, with the idea of gentle restraint and small accumulation, says, actually, what comes before a big rainfall are drops, little drops. And sometimes if you use that visual metaphor, you're trying to build something, you're trying to cultivate something, you want to see something flow along, and all you're seeing are little drops when you really need a deluge, or you're waiting for one. The initial interpretation of the little drops can be, oh, it's ineffective. Oh, it's not working. Oh, I'm not getting what I thought I would. Oh, it's not enough. But actually, those are the first signs of a big downfall that's going to come of rain. So be careful of how you're interpreting small signs right now, especially if you start interpreting them as signs of lack or deficiency, because that outlook can be really petty, and it can be really like fearful and anxious, and it's almost better when you see small things and they're not as big as you want, to say, well, it's working a little, and that's exactly the mindset that this hexagram tells us to cultivate. Very significant for Jupiter, big exalted Jupiter in its own bound and exaltation, turning retrograde while ruling a Mercury-Mars conjunction with Mercury retrograde. There's just, maybe you're feeling like, really, this is it? It's not over yet. So the first signs of rain are not a sign of deficiency or lack. The other one is the hexagram moves us visually from a place of no rain and just a few little drops to like, oh, all of a sudden now what's gathering is a big deluge. So this can work in a few different directions. One is that this Jupiter retrograde, especially because it's coming right before a grand water trine, and it rules the Mercury retrograde, can actually give us some indications of a big flood that's coming, a big release. Now, in the most generative sense, I like an exalted Jupiter to be giving some nice things, to be giving some fertile, creative, supportive things, so to give abundance, which is the nature of Jupiter. However, it is important to note that grand water trines and even a big exalted Jupiter in Cancer can create through flooding. And so where there is rain on the horizon, that could mean be patient. The big release, the big delivery, the big harvesting is coming. You've got to be patient, gently cultivate. But the other thing it can point us to is like a warning. You must establish some boundaries or some structures. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, because a flood is coming. And where there's rain, where there's drops, there's going to be coming more. And so foresight becomes really important. Jupiter is a god that's associated with wisdom and understanding, and the foresight of visionaries and prophets is Jupiterian. This is a moment where you can foresee a disaster coming, or you can foresee the particular places where the energy, the psychic mass is just going to dump. And if you can see that coming, you can prepare your heart for it. You can prepare your mind for it. You can prepare the environment for it. And you can be wise. You can act wisely, seeing the signs of the change in front of you. This is a subtle part of this hexagram as well, in my experience. Okay, well, before I move on to the next one, tomorrow night I'm giving a talk on Venus that I want you to check out. If you go to the live talks part of the events page on my website, you will see that there is a talk coming up this Thursday night on Venus. The talk is called Pairing the Planets, Venus's Many Faces. It takes place Thursday night from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern. When you register to attend, you get the live link for the webinar. But if you can't attend, you will be getting the recording to watch, audio, video recording, and transcript to watch on your own time. You get to keep that for life. So I hope to see you there. This is going to be a talk that explores Venus as a first philosophical principle in ancient astrology, which basically means, what does Venus represent about reality itself philosophically? That's where all of the planets get their starting point in the ancient philosophy of astrology. Learning about Venus on that level, like what is Venus with respect to the intelligence of divinity and reality itself? Learning about that, which is really almost like a non-dual way of understanding Venus, is going to really deepen your relationship to how you then pair Venus with other planets when you see Venus in birth charts. This kind of understanding is what Nightlight's all about. So, shameless plug, come study with us if this kind of thing is also appealing to you. All right, back to our list. Number 4 on the list for this Jupiter retrograde is a long period of delay preparing to release. If you have been building, developing, and cultivating something, paradoxically, even though we've been talking about this as a period where you've been held back and you may be tested before something releases, this hexagram is also one that has a long-standing history of being associated with something that will yield great, tremendous benefits, like a big deluge from the sky, if there's a history behind it of slow accumulated efforts over time. So when this hexagram comes up, and I've been asking, for example, will I find some success in the process of publishing my book, which I put a lot of research into and I've spent years writing, and I get something like this. In my experience, that reading is very auspicious, because that ninth hexagram will come up as a way of saying, yeah, all these slow, gentle accumulations of work. It's like you've been out working the fields, preparing them, and the clouds are starting to come in and it's going to rain. So if anything right now in your life has a history of slow, gentle, gradual, long-term committed development, you may find that this Jupiter retrograde, this Mercury retrograde, the next weeks with the grand water trine will bring the rain to start giving you the results of a long-term process you've gently cultivated. Beautiful, right? Pretty cool. So you can read it in different ways. It's funny that some people will experience that, while other people maybe more at the outset of a process that's going to require long, gentle development and effort, right? It can be read either way. That's why context is so important whenever you're doing divination. Finally, anytime Jupiter turns retrograde, and in this case, connected to a couple planets in Sagittarius, Mercury and Mars turning retrograde, Mercury in particular, the reworking of beliefs, ideals, understanding, ethics, philosophy, vision, all might be important right now. A turning point with respect to how you think, perceive, what your faith or beliefs look like would be quite natural for the pairing of the Mercury retrograde ruled by the Jupiter retrograde. It's interesting because that reading, although that was the changing line to focus on, the second hexagram was hexagram 60, which I won't read, but is called limitations. One of the conventional translations of the hexagram is limitation or limitations. And it talks about the appropriate way to cultivate boundaries and limits and discipline. For example, it's important, probably, if you want to grow spiritually, that you have some regular tending of your inner life. Is that therapy? Is it art? Is it meditation or prayer? Astrology certainly contributes to the development of our inner life, to reflect, who am I? Why am I here? What am I meant to learn in this season of life? If you don't cultivate some regularity, some consistency, some devotion, some discipline with that inner life, you're not going to see the results. And so for hexagram 9 to be paired with 60 is interesting, because it also suggests that a field that's not ready for a deluge because of small accumulated efforts might be not ready for such things because discipline has been lacking. Boundaries, structure, discipline, commitment has been lacking. In which case, a lack of small accumulated efforts due to a lack of discipline will result in being overwhelmed when the deluge comes. So this can be a time that speaks to the need to cultivate better self-care practices, better boundaries, better discipline, better consistent efforts, so that you can grow things and develop things over time. And so that when flooding comes, it's pouring into channels and tributaries that feed this elaborate garden that you've built. It's a good visual image, I guess. The other thing is that sometimes for our beliefs to mean anything, we have to walk our talk. People who have, for example, very intense beliefs about what they believe is right or good, but are not kind, are not walking their talk. If you have if you're on a high horse morally, with some really nice visions of what is good, right, true, just, but you're not a kind person, at least in my view, that's an example that many of us struggle with when it comes to walking our talk. We might have the right principles or ideas about what's just or right, but can we just be a decent person? So this is also a transit that comes along that might be saying, hey, look, where's the effort to become an embodiment of your beliefs and ideals? Where can you get a little bit more serious? Now, if there are, one of the other teachings of hexagram 60 has to do with galling limitations, meaning if you're zealous and too strict and too severe, that can actually cut life off. I mean, one of the reasons that it sometimes doesn't rain is because there's no rain in our own psyche. There's no generative for, like, I will say that at certain times in my own life, I've learned a lot about this with, say, the Capricorn moon placement in my birth chart, where the discipline has been there, but it's sometimes been almost too strict, to the point where the strictness prevents the rain from coming in. So there might be some lesson here too with the retrogradation, the Mercury-Mars. Like, are you getting some feedback about being overly zealous, fanatical, too strict, too intense with your beliefs? Can you soften? Because there's a wisdom about gentle, small acts of devotion and commitment over time that embody beliefs, that walk the talk in small moments, in gentle moments that accumulate and deliver results. So that might have to do with consistency, with walking our talk and not being too strict or severe in our thoughts or our thinking. And I like that for Jupiter in Cancer, which is also a planet of wisdom in a sign that's so gentle, that's so much more about embodying something nurturing. So anyway, I'll leave it there for today. Come study with us. After I sign off right now, you're going to hear more about the Year 1 program. We start this weekend. You can attend the classes live, or you can follow along with the recordings on your own at your own pace. Locating yourself within a lineage is really important, to feel like you have a teacher. In our case, we have a staff of teachers. I'm the lead teacher, but we have a staff you'll get to know. Locating yourself within a community and a lineage, if you're going to practice professionally, can be so important. To say, I came through all of these programs and I'm a nightlight astrologer, so to speak. That's what we want to give people. We want to give people an anchor. It doesn't mean that you're a carbon copy of me or the school. It means that you came through a lineage and you developed your own voice in relationship with tradition. I think we are only as capable of becoming someone really unique as much as we're able to follow people that we have found to be unique. So I have had teachers that have been very meaningful to me that I consider sort of a part of my lineage, but I've also very much become my own person. And I believe it's because of that juxtaposition of having traditions and lineages and then finding your own voice within them. We want that to happen when you study with us. So come check it out. I hope to see you guys there. Hope you're having a great day. And we will see you again tomorrow. We'll do some horoscopes with Jupiter turning retrograde. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. This is our first year course in Hellenistic astrology, and it begins again this November. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the course, the format of the course, and how to register. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is this course about? Well, if you are not familiar, ancient Hellenistic astrology is the earliest and original form of horoscopic astrology. All of the subsequent forms and schools of astrology that have existed over thousands of years come from these philosophical and theoretical roots. And so what you're doing when you study Hellenistic astrology is you're going back to understand the why behind absolutely everything. Why were there ever such a thing as houses and signs in the first place? How were the planets ever assigned to rule various portions of the zodiac in the first place? How do you use the categories of essential dignity, and why were they ever created in the first place? If you're someone like me, you like to know the why behind things, because once you understand the why, then you know how to use things more intuitively. So really the point of Hellenistic astrology, in my opinion, is not so much about going back and becoming a traditional astrologer or just being traditional for the sake of being traditional, as much as it is about grasping the roots of the entire system and paradigm. When you understand those roots, you have more intuition and understanding, which allow for you to be much more artful and fluid in the way that you speak the language of astrology. We call this class Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic because while it is about going back to understand the philosophical, theoretical, technical roots of the tradition, it's also about fluidly bridging those things with modern astrology and all of its most unique contributions. For example, modern astrology has given us so much psychological depth and personal depth. And so in a modern astrological setting, you're going to get the ability to explore your own character, your own psychology, and you're going to be able to utilize astrology for a process of healing and personal transformation. But when you pair that with ancient astrology, and it's almost like predictive karmic analytics, you really have a full toolkit to work with. And so that's also a great mission of ours at Nightlight, is to bridge ancient and modern forms, which is why we call the program Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. So that's just a little kind of overview of the program. If you want to know more about the specifics of the curriculum and of the syllabus, what I encourage you to do is go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, go to the first year course, scroll down, and you'll see this over 12 months you'll learn about. And here you're going to see more of a detailed breakdown of the curriculum itself. I can promise you that if you've studied astrology in modern context, but you've never gone back to the ancient roots, while some of these topics may look familiar to you and you go, oh, I've already learned about that, unless you've studied them from the Hellenistic perspective, I guarantee that you are not going to be familiar with this content. Hellenistic astrology is mind-blowingly new and interesting for most people. And if you've never studied it, again, don't assume that anything on this list is something you're going to be familiar with. In that way, the program is really ideal for a variety of different people, and I'll say more about that in a second. So what is the format of the course? Let's go to that next. Scroll down and you're going to see that the course includes 30 online webinars that I lead throughout the year. Over the course of a year together, I have 30 classes that are broken into different units of material. In between those classes, we have breakout study sessions with your course director and 2 TAs. They're going to lead you through Q&A sessions and tutoring sessions to make sure that you have a lot of support in between major units of study. In addition, we also have an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions year-round and get an answer within a business day in the student forum, where a lot of people also connect and build community. Lots of people in that forum also develop like little meetup groups outside of class. That's very common in all of our programs. It's a very community-loving, warm space where anyone's also welcome. Throughout the course, you're also going to find that for every lesson, if you're just there as a hobby student, you can just listen to the webinars. They're all recorded for you. So if you can't make the live webinars, everything is housed on the website as recordings. I'd say about 40 or 50% of our students are going to be following along at their own pace, whereas the other half might be attending the live webinars. But it's really kind of, you know, if you can attend a few and then one week you got to be gone, the recordings are always there. You have lifetime access to everything in the course, so it's not a big deal. For every lesson as well, if you're someone who wants to go really, really deep, maybe you have the intention to practice professionally, this course is set up with an optional certification exam at the end from our school, from our program. So you can, you know, if you want to build that resume and develop the credentials from our programs, you can do that, but it's optional, so you don't have to. And outside of every lesson, we have recommended reading. We have supplemental bonus content, all of which is optional, but it's there for people who might want a lot more, whereas some people will take the webinars themselves, and that'll be plenty. So it's really flexible in that way. Also, this is one program within 4 years of curriculum that are meant to go together. And so most people who come through our first year program will end up taking our second year program, where we develop forecasting and prediction and transit tracking techniques. Our third year program, which is aimed at counseling and psychology, so psychological counseling skills, is our third year program. And then the Oracle Within, which is our exploration of the philosophical, spiritual roots of the divinatory oracular tradition of astrology. So there's a lot of material there. We also have another 1-year program in horary astrology for some people who want to add that predictive tool to their toolkit. So there's just a lot of material at Nightlight that this class is actually just one part of, which can be taken standalone, or for some people, they get into it, they're going to love it. You're going to hang out with us for 3 or 4 years worth of content. This program is ideal for a number of different types of students of astrology. I'll say that for starters. So let's see here. I'll stop sharing this. So we have there's a profile of the typical students who come through our courses. One is going to be people who just want a very guided introduction to ancient astrology because you've never had it before. Maybe you're only familiar with modern, and you want that guided, structured approach to learning traditional for the first time. Also, people who are brand new to astrology in general, there's no better place to start than at the roots of the ancient foundations. So whether you're a total beginner or just a beginner to Hellenistic, this is a great place to start. If you are someone who's been around astrology for a long time, but you've never had a guided, structured approach to Hellenistic astrology, again, this is a great place to start. I promise you, Hellenistic is very different than what you're familiar with, and you're going to need a guided and structured approach at some point in time. I also think for people who are looking for a lineage, which means not just a bunch of information, but a practitioner-specific based approach where you get to see a practitioner work with clients. You get to hear how a practitioner has prioritized different techniques and why. You're going to get a structured, spiritually grounded focus at Nightlight as well, where if you're looking for someone who practices astrology, but also values grounded everyday spiritual practice, that's Nightlight. If you want a community that's been in the industry for a long time now, this is our 16th year of teaching programs and guiding students through trainings. So all of those things, if they matter to you, this is a great place to study. It's a warm community atmosphere. It's spiritually grounded. It's focused. It's academically rigorous. It's going to provide you the appropriate preparation for practicing professionally, especially if you go through all of our programs. But also for those who are just curious and love astrology for your own personal interests, this is going to be a great place for you to learn and grow and thrive and feel like you have a lot of support around you in the curriculum, the teachers, the community, as you're developing, what might just be a personal interest or spiritual hobby. So that is who it's ideal for. Finally, how you register. You go over to the website. I'm going to take you back there. And it's at the bottom of the first year page. You're going to find that the early bird rate is in effect until October 24th. You can save significantly off the cost of the course when you use the early bird rate, where you can pay in full, or use an early bird installment rate plan. Both are going to save you off significantly off the cost of the course. But also at Nightlight, it has always been our mission to make sure that astrological education is accessible for everyone. So please, if you are someone who would love to take this course, but maybe you could only afford a small amount of tuition per month, use the tuition assistance. It is there. All you got to do is apply. You fill out the little form. You tell us your situation. If you're on a fixed income, if you're on a limited income, if you're part-time, if you're in between jobs, if you don't make a lot and you're on that fixed budget, we understand. We don't want people to hurt themselves trying to study something that is spiritual that we feel should be very accessible for everybody. So if you're someone who could use a little help to make this program happen, for whatever reason, maybe you're a single parent or you're on disability or you're retired or you're on a fixed income, whatever the case is, use that tuition assistance. Also, people in other countries who have extreme, exchange rates. We get it. So just use the tuition assistance and we'll be glad to make sure that the price point is accessible. For us, as a spiritual topic, we're a business at the end of the day, but we believe that this is a spiritual topic. And so accessibility has been a part of our model for 16 years now. We've never not had one of our training programs with affordable sliding scale-based prices for people who need it. So please take advantage of that. It's all there for you. I hope to see you in classes soon. And if you have any questions about the program whatsoever, direct them to us at info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see you all coming up here in November. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.